Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Community FC. We've got episode 7 of the Roundup Review Season 2 coming for you. And today we are joined by a very special guest. So we're not joined by our constant co-host, Rich. He's not going to be constant co-host anymore because he decided to go on holiday. How rude. He's having a lovely time enjoying himself. So we obviously, he deserves a little bit of downtime. So fair play to you. But we have got a friend of the show and actually a regular on the show who has been on. So Jamie, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Nah, absolute pleasure, mate. Absolute pleasure. And I'm really excited to get into this episode with you because we've got some topics that I think you're going to have some really good insight on as you're a fan of one of the teams we want to talk about. So we're gonna try and keep the episode fairly short as normal. We've got a couple of topics to talk through, all kind of based around different things. So we'll be jumping around a bit, but hopefully it's kind of hitting all the topics that we want to talk about. So we're going to start off on the Prem, and we're not going to do. I feel like we've been getting in the same kind of conversations recently, and it's going to happen because that's where the content's being. Like the relegation battle has been the spicy battle of the Prem, and it's been what people have been really interested in. However, I think most of the results over kind of this week after the international break kind of went how people expected. Wasn't really any shockers in that kind of sense, and the same with the top two. They kind of just plodded along and did the top two. So I actually think the most interesting thing that happened, and definitely from both of our cases, unfortunately, is going to be the top four. So that's where we're going to kick off. So we'll quickly just go through the games themselves, scores for people, and then we can kind of talk about any kind of points we got on them. So we might as well start off with the order that they kind of went in, unfortunately. It's going to happen. You're just going to have to rip the Band-Aid off. So I'll literally let you kick off. But it is my great pleasure to obviously say it was Brentford 4, Chelsea 1.
It was indeed. I watched the game. The first half was a bit of a boring one. Brentford looked good throughout the whole game, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
First half, typically Chelsea are going to control the possession. But Brentford didn't let us out. Brentford was pressing so high. It was relentless, and it was really sort of like the most nervy I've been watching us for quite a while, just because they made us so uncomfortable. Normally we don't have a problem breaking the press. We're pretty good at that, pretty good playing out from the back, breaking the press. But then it was the second wave of pressing came. So we'd break the first press, and then it's just our midfield, for example, is just hounded, and it's like, what can we do now? And it just I don't really think the formation worked. Went with a 4 at the back. Typically, 4 at the back's been pretty good to us this season. We beat Spurs 3 times in a row playing 4 at the back in the space of 20 days or something. Mm-hmm. But this time, I just don't think the formation was quite there. It seemed to be a midfield 3, Kante, Loftus-Cheek and Mount, and it just didn't seem to...
Not right balance. Yeah.
Exactly. It just didn't seem to tick quite as well. Without a Kovacic or a Jorginho in there, for example, making the game kind of tick. Obviously, Jorginho is very press-resistant with his passing. He's so sharp with his passing. Kovacic is very press resistant as well, but with his dribbling, the way he moves out with the ball. And Loftus-Cheek's kind of similar, but different areas of the pitch are where their strengths lie. I would say Kovacic from deep. I trust him with the ball pretty much anywhere. But yeah, second half started. Rudiger scored that absolute thunderbolt.
Yeah, let's take time to go on the highlight there. It was a fantastic goal. So that was something, a minor consolation by the end, but great at the time.
It was going to happen at one point throughout the season. He tries it every other game.
Yeah,
he tries shooting from 40 yards every other game. It's going to happen. And this one flew in. And this was in the 48th minute. So second half, and we were 1-0 up at this stage. And this is the first time a team has ever opened scoring in the second half and then lost by 3 or more goals. So
I didn't know that, but yeah, that says it all.
That's not really a record that I'm proud of as a Chelsea fan. But no, credit to Brentford. They were unbelievable. They were so good. They didn't sort of let the heads drop. They scored I think it was 140 seconds after we'd scored or something like that.
Swift reply.
And it just kept going. There was a 10-minute period where we just looked so shell-shocked, and they capitalised. So it's credit to them. They were superb.
Yeah, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. Uncomfortable is literally what I would call it. It never looked comfortable. They were pressing you. You weren't expecting them to pile that much pressure on you. And that's what kind of did it. And then as soon as they did the swift reply goal and then scored, yeah, it was, especially your defence, they literally were doing the whole looking around, being whose fault is it kind of thing? Because they're just what is going on? Why are we keep just losing and they're slicing through us like butter. And it was, they like just kept on pressing. I mean, a nice moment, obviously not for a Chelsea fan, but for everyone else, nice moment for Christian Eriksen scoring again. And, but they just looked like every time they just like slide in these like diagonal balls through past one of your defenders. And then it's like, it's in the back of the net. And I don't think anyone was expecting that after you saw the 1-0. And if you'd seen the goal, you're like, oh, what a banger from Rudiger. The crowd's going to be, but doing it. And it just all fell apart.
Yeah, it was shades of that West Brom game from last season, if you remember that one, the 5-2, which strangely enough was in the same game week. So
week.
Literally a day apart from the prior year. So the year before, a day apart, we lost 5-2 at home to West Brom, and it's just weird how it's kind of mirrored. It's the same game week at home to a newly promoted team. We lost by 3 goals. It was just a bit of a shock game, and it was kind of a one-off because at that time we were really chasing top 4 last season, and I kind of worried. I was like, the wheels are going to come off now. We're not going to get top 4, that kind of thing, and we just sort of carried on. So I'm hoping that this is only a sort of a freak result.
Yeah,
and then we pick up where we left off, because since sort of the sanctions and everything that happened behind the scenes, we've actually been very good. Mm-hmm. I think we've won every other game apart from that one. So it's a freak result. That's what I'm going to call it for now. We'll see what happens next week.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's not time to panic just yet. I think these results happen and you shake them off, and it's one of them. But I do think for any FPL managers out there, next year it's worth taking a punt on not expecting Chelsea to turn up in that week next week. If that's, who knows? There could be a thing to go on. Anyway, I won't put you through that too much more. We'll move on to another game. So I'll take the Band-Aid off this one. Not really a Band-Aid because I'm kind of used to it now. So we'll jump to the second game. The second game was my game, which was United Leicester, which was a 1-1 draw. Who saw that coming? Every United fan. Ralph Rangnick has literally transformed Manchester United into a draw machine. Like, if you have seen, I don't even want to look at the stats and didn't to see how many games we've drawn in the last 10, because it's probably 8. You can pretty much bet. I remember going to Rich's and watching the Southampton game. We were like, it's going to be a draw, and I kind of just expect it at this point. And actually, for once, I do feel sometimes we get a bit harshly done, and actually we should have won, but we just don't, and we didn't dominate. This game, completely opposite. Leicester deserved the win. Leicester should have won that game. I don't think. I mean, there's a very controversial goal disallowment from the ref, and me trying not to be biased. Obviously, it's against my team. I actually do think when they pulled it back, there's enough for it to be overturned, but it depends on, like all the time, it depends on the angle, it depends on the slow-mo, but it is quite clearly a hook, isn't it? Whether it's a bad hook or not, it does hook his leg and pull it out from under him slightly. But it's one of them where it is a very harsh one if you're a Leicester fan, and that's what's hard to take, I guess, for them.
This is the thing. There is such a fine line between what is and isn't a clear and obvious error, as they like to say. And it's such a hard one. I personally wouldn't say there's enough for them to be like, that's a clear and obvious error, because if he had given it, fine. If he hadn't given it, then fine. I think you should kind of
go with the ref on that one.
Side with the ref on that one. But it's one of those. It's so close, so on the edge. But yeah, so Leicester probably do feel very, very hard done by that. But on balance, it was probably a fair result. It was a bit of a, as you say, there were no shocks really. It wasn't really a shocking game to watch. It's
just nothing really happened, and it was. But I just felt that Leicester just at times dominated. We had a little spell, but they kind of dominated a lot more, and I just feel they had a lot better chances than we did. And regardless of the goal being ruled out, I think overall they kind of edged it a bit more. And again, I think if there's not as much hook emotion, and it kind of is more just like connection, I think it doesn't get given every single time. I think it's just because of the way it almost does hook him, and it kind of pulls him a little bit. That's why it's given. But yeah. It is a really, really tight one to call from either side, and you'd be fuming if you were Leicester in that sense. But yeah, I'm not going to go on about it too much. I think United it is what it is. Like we were terrible defensively. Sorry, when kind of Rangnick came in, he's made us look a little bit better at the back. Some games, and other games we're not. But then some games we look like absolute monsters up up the top of the field, but nothing happens and we have loads of shots and nothing goes in. And other times it's just this draw where we don't really do much. We don't take shots. We don't do anything. And we just take a draw.
I just want to kind of touch on James Maddison.
Yeah.
He's kind of unfortunate because England have such an embarrassment of riches in his position because he's been so good recently for Leicester. And he's one of those players where it's like, yeah, we know how good he is. We know how good his ability is, but he doesn't do it enough. Like that. That's he kind of goes in and out. But recently, I think he's been superb.
I feel if there was a poster boy for purple patch informed players, it's James Maddison in the Prem because he's non-existent and gets dropped for like a bit of the season. And as soon as he gets that one goal, he just goes on an absolute streak. It's unreal.
That cross for Ian Atro's goal on his left foot. He's so good. It's just one of those players that's just like so good to watch. And his numbers have matched that recently. I just think, he's probably. I think you might miss out on a spot at the World Cup, depending on what happens. Obviously,
injuries,
sort of start of next season. But I think he might just miss out, which is unfortunate for him. We're just so sort of overly populated in that role.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And interesting as well. I don't have the full stat, but I think I'm right in saying I don't think Manchester United have I don't think we've won without Ronaldo being in the squad or on the pitch. So that again is another interesting one to be like, Ronaldo's the problem. And the problem is we've had this really. I'm going to say it on here because we haven't really touched on it, but it's for everyone to see. And if you haven't seen it, this is me putting it out there, right? With Ronaldo and Messi, they're both getting on in their career, and it's the first time we're now seeing the downward trajectory of their careers when people were overhyping stuff and they came in and expecting him to be top goal scorer at United, top goal scorer of the Prem and still doing it. Then you still see absolute flashes of it, like the goal last week. I don't know what, Fred is Brazilian. Fred is out at the moment in full force, and he did that nice little back heel for the our Manchester United goal of the month, and he's up for goal of the month for the Prem as well. And then he just absolutely bangs it. Yes, they give him too much space to defend, but like it's still a great goal. But like people need to be realistic about this kind of stuff. But we are, whether the creativity sometimes gets stifled a bit in the midfield of Bruno or not, we are much more threatening as a team with Ronaldo than without Ronaldo, and I don't think anyone needs to go against that. Or it is mental that people are putting everything down to Ronaldo being the issue. Anyway, we'll move on. So the next two I actually think were more shocking. Well, maybe not actually. Your result was pretty shocking, but they're still quite shocking results to me this weekend. So Spurs 5, Newcastle 1. Now, this is more shocking to me because Newcastle have actually looked a bit more solid recently, and you're not expecting them to get a drubbing like they did.
Exactly, yeah. And again, it was similarly to the Chelsea game. Newcastle went one up. And from there, it was just like an onslaught from Spurs. It kind of just lit a fire under them, and they blew them away. And Spurs are such a weird team right now. You like what Spurs are going to turn up for you? Like they were unreal. That second half against Newcastle, they were so good. And if they play like that, they've got every chance of top four. But then next week, they're shit, and it's like it just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it was second half is what I think. We were saying in our group chat and stuff before, and I think I said when Conte came, that's the Conte I was expecting to see from him as a manager and trying to use some of that squad. And then some weeks, it literally goes, but this is such a Spurs thing to do at the moment. Next week, they'll have a horrendous loss and he'll be making comments about if they still want me as a manager again and all this kind of stuff. It's crazy. They're so hit and miss. But
they are.
I also think it was very much the same as you in the shell-shocked sense, because they literally, the defence went down, the heads went down, and we know that Newcastle have been very sus in defence anyway, recently much more solid to some of their signings. But in general, they've had a very weak point in their defence. And, when like Steven Bergwijn's coming on and basically being on the pitch like seconds and then literally being like, oh yeah, I'm just going to run through and score. It's just a joke at that point to just keep adding more and more. So I think obviously the score very much flattered Spurs because they banged them in so quickly, but they did play very, very well. And Newcastle, again, it's the same as you in a sense from Chelsea. Can they bounce back? And they kind of need to bounce back, almost harder if they want to keep getting the points on. I think they're safe, but it's still one of those things where they can't afford to take any like foot off the gas in a relegation thing. They should be out of it, but you never know in this Prem season. And then the last one, which again, another kind of shock result. And then we'll talk about top four in a minute in general after we've gone through this last one. But so it was Crystal Palace 3, Arsenal 0, which is again is not what people probably were expecting on Arsenal's current form.
No, exactly. I've sort of been a big praiser of Arsenal recently. I think, especially since the turn of the year, really, I think they've been so good to watch. Really tough to play against as well. Like, you don't really think of Arsenal as kind of like a dogged, determined team, but when they need to be, they are. I think their record for defending set pieces before this Palace game, because obviously they conceded pretty much straight away from a set piece, before this Palace game was so good. They were unreal at set, so organised. But Palace just absolutely run all over them. They just didn't give it. It's similar to Brentford against Chelsea, I suppose. They were literally everywhere. Conor Gallagher was all over the pitch.
Yeah,
literally.
I've seen so many people saying that for that particular game he was the White Kante and had 7 lungs and was just like running around the pitch left, right, centre. And he was, though. He covered everything. But one thing I think is really interesting, though, and we kind of saw it a bit in the first one, and I'm like, is this just a thing because he played for them? But Vieira really seems to have Arsenal's number, because it was only a last minute freak, literally last second of the game corner that they conceded to lose the points of the Emirates anyway. So he did well the first time, and now they've been again hit and miss but getting better, and he seems to have done it again. And actually Jordan Ayew also scored a really great goal from a good cross and really well finished. But yeah, it's a weird one.
It is but yeah, Palace, I think I'm one of my best mates is a Palace fan. So I'm pretty sort of well versed in the feeling among the Palace camp right now, and I don't think I've seen this level of optimism from Palace fans, because it just to them this feels like it's a rebuild. It feels like this is the start of a big project for them, and it does seem that way because they're changing their identity and the way they play football. Obviously, they used to like Pulis and Hodgson football, sort of, we'll keep you afloat, but it won't be pretty, that kind of thing. But now they're blowing teams away when they're really, really at it. And you look at the number of games they've lost is not that high compared to some of the other teams in and around them. They've just drawn so many games, just similar to Man United, I suppose. Yeah. But the brand of football is changing, and the way they play is changing, and it's just the way they're playing right now. As I say, so much energy. It's creative. It's just not something you would have associated Palace with not so long ago. But so credit to Vieira for turning that around so quickly.
Absolutely, and not to dampen Crystal Palace's hopes and dreams, I am slightly worried what the effect of Conor Gallagher goes, and maybe one or two others if they come in, then that could change the whole squad. But I think in general they've got a plan. Vieira's proving me wrong, and I think they're doing really, really well at the moment. So we've kind of talked about those were the shocking games. So now this is the interesting one. So top four, in a sense, now becomes really interesting because United keep slipping down because we keep dropping 2 points every other week. Or nearly every week at the moment. Arsenal looks like they were on an absolute rampage until the freak loss. I think I've said this for a while now, but I think from near the beginning of the season, I'm pretty sure you're going to secure 3rd place. I don't think you're going to be scrapping for 4th, depending how quickly you bounce back from this and anything else that happens. But I think you'll be fine. I think there's a really interesting one here where I do think, and this is no disrespect to West Ham or Wolves, because they're both, if you look at the points, Wolves are at 31 games played, 49 points. Tottenham are 4th with 30 games, 54 points. It's not a crazy amount in it. I know we're getting to the tail end of the season. But I don't think they're going to clinch it. But I do think between Tottenham, Arsenal and United, I would have put us on for nailed on earlier on when things started looking up again. Now I think I'm pretty resigned. I don't think we're going to get top 4 this season, which is not fun for me as a fan, but I just think it's going to happen. And I dare to say it, but I do think it's between Arsenal and Tottenham. So it depends whether Arsenal bounce back and look, in my opinion, I think they could do it, but are they doing, and no offense Arsenal fans, but you'll know what I mean, are they doing a classic Arsenal and they're just not going to miss out again, because this could be the start of it, and they have the biggest track record of doing it. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's between Arsenal and Spurs, or do you think anyone else has a chance?
I do think it's between Arsenal and Spurs. I guess the only saving grace for Arsenal at the moment is that they've got a game in hand. I think they're level on points for Spurs right now. That game in hand could come in, huge for them. But obviously they've just got spanked 3-0 to Palace, so who knows?
Got United next week after.
Yeah, exactly. So some big games. They've still got to play Chelsea as well. Some big games coming for Arsenal. But you'd like to think that Chelsea have it nailed on for third. No more freak results, please.
Otherwise it becomes too dangerous.
No more surprises, and we should be okay because we've got that game in hand over Spurs as well. So
that Arsenal game could be the turning point. If we beat Arsenal, then hope reignites into the United ship, because we'll then close up quite nicely, and then they could play Chelsea and lose, and then it could be close again. So, but I just think the way the season's gone, and we are the draw machine, I'm very pessimistic this season. When I was so jubilant at the beginning of the season, like that opening game, if I could go back and experience the feelings of the opening game. Anyway, we'll move on there. So that's kind of the Prem covered. And I just thought it was a really interesting topic, and especially because two of our teams are currently looking for kind of top four positions, one a bit more safe than the other. So the next one we're going to go on to is actually we're going to go to the World Cup, because obviously we had a lot of international break happened, and obviously there was qualifiers and there was kind of some shock results. So I think we're going to talk about two games in particular. There's plenty of games you could talk about in the qualifiers, but we're going to pick two specifically out, and I think you can probably guess what they're going to be if you're keeping up in the football world. And then we're just going to talk about the groups and the World Cup in general, just for a little one. And then we've got one more topic after that, so we will not spend too long on this. But so the qualifiers. I'll let you kick off on this one, Jay. So we had two interesting matches and very shock results for different reasons. So pick whichever one you want and off you go.
We did. I'm probably going to take great pride in talking about the Italy game, to be honest.
Off you go.
I didn't actually watch the game. I was out, but I was keeping up to date with the score. I couldn't quite believe it when I saw that they'd notched a last-minute winner. And to be honest, I found... I did smile a little bit after the way they celebrated the win. They weren't the most gracious in.
I think it's hard not to when you had that chance in that summer and the feeling and everything, and then it's one of them.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they were the most gracious in victory at the Euros, but I can understand that. I don't hold like a grudge against them or anything, because you're going to do it. We were singing "It's Coming Home" every minute of every day for about a month. So you're going. We're going to get on people's nerves anyway. But I saw a quote from Bonucci after the game. I don't know if you saw this, but he sort of had a little jibe at the system, the qualifying system. I've got the quote here, and he said, "We played it all in a one-off match. It's an absurd system. There are teams that qualified after losing 4 or 5 games. We are at home after losing only one in the 92nd minute. It's truly madness." Well, Leonardo, yes, they lost one game, right, which was the last game, but they won one of their last 6 qualifiers. Yeah. So they don't really have sort of grounds to moan, especially seeing as they literally just won the Euros. They're a giant in European football. They always have been, and they went out to a team who are, I think, like 60th or something, 67th in the rankings. That should have been comfortable for them. That should have been comfortable for their B team, their C team even. So they're pointing fingers, or he's pointing fingers. You kind of have to look at yourself. That should have been covered. That absolutely should have been covered for them. But
yeah, absolutely. And all I saw, I didn't see the quote, but I saw enough Bonucci memes going around to Italy memes in general. But as you said, like the form they had before it, they've got no one else to blame. And I'm sorry, but if the European champions come up against North Macedonia and they lose, that's their fault. And taking nothing away from North Macedonia, let's point that out here. What heart and what fight they show every time. The same as I feel exactly the same as teams like San Marino. They just play their hearts out every time they're on that pitch, and that's exactly what it would. And actually, what a banging goal to put them through anyway. So it's not even like it was an awful freak tap in or a VAR decision or something. No, it was a great goal. It absolutely stunned them. But one thing which it blows my mind, if we're talking about European champions not that long ago, this is the second consecutive World Cup they're going to miss.
Yeah, I know. It's incredible.
It's crazy. And it's like you're looking at that team and you're like, they had people that like Jorginho. It's like they're up for Ballon d'Ors and stuff from the competitions and stuff that they played in, and now it's like, yeah, you're not going to be at the World Cup, mate. It's bonkers. And the funniest thing, I guess, if you're a player as well, I was listening to, I think it was something Ben Foster said, but he was just like, everybody thinks that normally they're like, oh, World Cup, you're going to get the summer off and stuff. The way the World Cup is going to be this time, you're not getting a break. If you're not playing, you're literally training at your club like normal. There's going to be no downtime, and then it's going to be straight back to it. So it's not even like they're getting a summer off to go and chill somewhere. They're literally just going to be annoyed that they've got to stay at home, train, and get on with it.
Yeah, exactly.
So the next one, I guess if we're kind of done talking about that one, was the Senegal-Egypt match. And I think this was a very headliney one for lots of different reasons. I think the main one, and obviously the really poor one, and this is, appalling behaviour and, not condoned at all by Community FC, which is obviously all the lasers again. It seems to be something that happens. You usually see it actually quite a lot in Italy and places like that. And it happens in every league. I'm not pointing out fingers to specific leagues, but it happens all over. But you do see it in leagues more than others. But lots of lasers in the fans, especially from the Senegal fans, it seems to be, when they were stepping up to do the pens at the end. And if you've seen the still of Mo Salah's face, where it's literally just covered in, like, literally his face is green. Like, it's like he's literally the claw guys out of Toy Story at that point, isn't he? Let's be honest. But it's shocking that it's not just one laser. That's like 15, 20 lasers on his face when you're trying to take a pen. And, I think that there wasn't enough done about it afterwards. And some of the quotes from like the Senegalese like teams and like boards and everything like that weren't particularly great. They were like, oh, our fans haven't really done it before. So, but it's like, come on. But I think, I'll let you talk about that, and then we'll talk about the next point I've got.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen it that bad. It was crazy. Obviously, you get like the odd person sometimes, like if you've seen it at tournaments before, where it's been like one laser or someone snuck a laser.
Yeah.
But they were so blasé about it as well. I don't know if you saw like some of the pictures of the fans actually pointing them. But there was a guy looking like he was trying to change the Sky channel. Like he was literally holding it out like that, like so obviously, and nothing was being done about it. Salah was basically in a rave at that point.
Literally.
So no wonder he missed. But yeah, it was it's crazy. I've never seen it to that level before. No, obviously, it happens, but I've never seen it like that.
That's to the blatant level, and then just be like, "Oh, was it our fans?" And then it's like, "I'm sorry." Like, just go watch the footage, or like, yeah, it's crazy. But I guess the other point I wanted to bring up, and I guess why there's a couple of stories and narratives if you want to build stuff around it. But obviously, it was a repeat of the AFCON final. It was the same result as the AFCON final, and it's always the Salah versus Mane, and especially with them being teammates and talking about contracts and who's going to be there next season. There's so much you can build narratively around this, but I just think it's the same result and the same thing that happened, and it's just like, oh, that must be heartbreak for Mo Salah in Egypt, and Mane must just turn up to training and just be like, oh, don't care if you got more goals than me in the Prem, like, you know what I mean? He must
exactly. And Mendy was the hero both times for Senegal.
So I just, it was just something to bring up, but yeah, never seen the likes of the laser rave that was going on, and it's ridiculous. And this is the problem, that if anything happened like that in the World Cup, the actual tournament itself, they'd be absolute uproar, because it was a qualifier and it wasn't one of the big European nations or anything like that. I feel like there's a lot less media attention. Like, obviously, don't get me wrong, there was media attention and pictures and stuff, but there's no, like, I feel there's a lot less consequences for teams in Africa or somewhere like that. And I think that's a bit unfair, obviously, on the team themselves, because there should be more investigation. There should be harsher sanctions kind of put on something that's happened. So that was the two games I want to talk about. And then I just wanted to really quickly, not crazy amounts we can speculate right now, but obviously the World Cup draw has happened. So we have some interesting ones. I'm not going to go through every group. I think there's a couple of groups I want to point out. First of all, obviously, we'll start with the group for England, because that's who we both support, and that is Group B. So it's going to be England, Iran, the USA, and then obviously we have a triple tie of who it could be of Ukraine, Scotland, and Wales. And it's like, I was like, first of all, that's quite crazy that Scotland and Wales could be in our group. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's qualifiers to be played there. But what are you thinking about Group B so far?
You got to fancy our chances, really. You got to fancy England's chances. They should top that group.
Mm-hmm.
It's just then the running, obviously, from there, the teams that they could get, it then becomes a lot more difficult. But you've got to fancy our chances to sort of go pretty deep into the competition.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
the worst thing I've seen talking about like journalism and news outlets and stuff, how many people have already started labeling Group B the group of death? I was like, are you taking the piss? Like, that is absolutely not the group of death. There was much harder groups that are going to be playing.
Absolutely.
I was like, yes, there could be a competitive game versus, one of those teams potentially, but England should be topping that group and comfortably topping that group without any disrespect to any of the other teams. For me personally, I think there is other groups where there's a lot more chances. Like you kind of need one team which could be a bogey team or a bigger team. I think, for example, Group D, France, Australia, and then it's got Denmark as if they got through. I think that could be interesting because Denmark can throw some spanners in the works. And then UAE, Peru, or Tunisia, like you're thinking those two are going to be the ones. But again, they'll be the ones that progress. Or you could say the same as, Group E, for example, Spain, and it's going to be Costa Rica or New Zealand, Germany and Japan. They've got two big titans clashing. And that's where I think lots of these, if you look through most of them, there tends to be the top two that you can quite comfortably go, I'd place my money on those two being the ones that qualify out of the groups. But then the interesting thing happens of usually it's who does that team then have to play because they finish top? That's where the exciting part happens. So I think most of them are pretty standard. Obviously, the World Cup, anything can happen. We've seen it a million times.
I actually think Group F looks a great group. Belgium, I'm not looking at it now, but Belgium, Croatia, Canada, and Morocco, is it?
And Ghana, not Canada, but yeah.
Group F, is it?
Yeah, Belgium, Ghana, Morocco, Croatia.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I could swear it was. Anyway, clearly I got that wrong.
Canada is Group H, which I also think spicy, which is Portugal, Canada, Uruguay, South Korea.
I think I'm looking at a different one here.
Unless I've got a different website. I mean, I've got Sky Sports up, so hopefully they got their facts right.
Because I got Group H as Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay, and South Korea.
Oh,
anyway,
so maybe one of them's got the teams the wrong way around.
Exactly. Yeah. Either way, I thought it was Belgium, Canada, Morocco, Croatia, which would be.
Yeah.
You would expect Belgium and Croatia to come through that.
You would.
But Canada are on kind of like a bit of an upwards trajectory. I think this is the only time I've seen Canada pose kind of any kind of threat in my lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, I think some of those teams like Canada are very reliant on one or two players of their absolute superstars of the team that need to be fit to be able to pull them through. So that would be an interesting one. But I think, obviously there's going to be more to come out and very much later down the line, we'll start talking more about like England squads and that kind of stuff. And that's where we can really do some fun predictions and see what happens. But currently for now, there's not really much more to talk about. It's the groups. And I think, as I said, most of them you can kind of pick out the top two. Some of them, there's going to be a spicy second and third place finish. And usually there's one which is going to be the weaker one of the group. But it's the World Cup. Cup competitions, anything can happen. And that's what you like about it. And it's good fun. So that's kind of the World Cup. And the last one I want to talk about, and that's why I want to keep a bit of segment here. We've talked about this on a couple of podcasts. But I thought even when it happened, I was like, I need to get Jamie on. This is going to be definitely a topic for him. But we've covered it before, but they're going to cover it from different angles. So we're going to be talking about the Chelsea sanctions, but we've talked about them before. And I'm basically going to let you open forum, go for it here. And I'll kind of chip in when I've got any questions or something. But I think most people, if you're not a Chelsea fan, wants to know what it's like with the sanctions of being in a club if you are a fan of that club.
Yeah, and I watched the episode that you and Rich did on this particular topic, and I kind of echo what you guys said. I think you spoke really well. You were pretty level-headed on it. It's a strange one. It's not something that I think many people are going to experience as a supporter of a club pretty much ever. But yeah. On the sanctions, first of all, I know it feels like an absolute lifetime ago now. It feels like so much has happened since that they actually came in. But I think it has to happen. I think it's the right thing to do. And I know a lot of Chelsea fans kind of echo that. There are a lot of people that will feel hard done by, and it's always going to happen. But obviously, the bigger picture is what's going on in the Ukraine at the moment. So kind of right now, it's needs must. It's whatever it takes to stop that. Which I think is kind of the general consensus. So yeah, with the current situation, with what's happened since, it feels like all the news that comes out, it just gets more and more bleak for Chelsea fans. We've had a lot to kind of deal with recently. Obviously, the sanctions on Abramovich, not being able to go to games or buy merchandise or do anything like that to support the club, other than obviously watch from home. And then obviously there was talk of like extreme levels of like, capping travel to games and whatever, but I think they've sorted that out now. Yeah. They've kind of changed the license to allow them to actually operate properly as a football club, which is good news, considering no money's going to go to Roman now anyway.
Yeah.
We've got the contract situations. So Rudiger, obviously the biggest talking point right now is that he's out of contract in the summer. If we don't sort this out pretty soon, I think it's safe to say he's gone.
Christensen, love him at United.
Yeah, let's not talk. We won't talk about that just yet.
Yeah.
Christensen, I think, is gone anyway. I think pretty sure he's agreed terms with Barcelona.
Yeah.
Azpilicueta has signed a new contract, so that's a bit of that's like a sort of a little bit of good news. He's been a model professional since he came to the club, and he's a great captain. So I think we need him, even if he's kind of phased out a little bit because he's getting a little bit older.
Still in the dressing room. Yeah, exactly.
And if another injury happens to Reece James, then we're in trouble. So we absolutely need him.
Yeah.
And it would help not having to invest in another sort of right back cover, for example, because we know Reece James is first choice. So, and then recently broke the news of Thomas Tuchel splitting with his wife. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't know.
So yeah, Thomas Tuchel and his wife have split. I think that was like last week, just after the Brentford game. So anything that can be thrown at Chelsea is kind of being thrown at Chelsea right now. So it feels like there's a lot going on. I think I speak for a lot of Chelsea fans when I say that Thomas Tuchel staying is the most important thing right now.
Yeah.
Regardless of the owners or whatever, Thomas Tuchel is the one that we need to keep. I'd see any player in that current squad leave before I see Thomas Tuchel leave. But he's been absolutely incredible. He's been amazing since the sanctions as well. He's conducted himself absolutely perfectly.
Absolutely.
And there are a lot of managers that we've had in the past that wouldn't have dealt with that quite so well. The Mourinhos, the Contes, that would they have stuck about? Would they have spoken so well as he has? I don't really think so. And then, of course, before the Brentford game, there was the protest. I'm sure you might have saw that as well about the Ricketts family, the one of the 3 or 4 main bidders. It seems like the board, Chairman Bruce Buck, and the Rain Group, who are conducting the sale, are kind of giving them preferential treatment, and they prefer their bid, which obviously money talks. They're the richest bidder, but they have a long history of out of turn comments, a lot of racist comments that I'm sure you might have seen. And this we're not talking things that have happened back in like the 90s or that have been taken out of context. It's like 2020, 2021. These are comments that are really, really fresh. And obviously the fan base, they don't take kindly to that. It's not, we don't need somebody like that sort of representing our club and owning the club and making the decisions for us. So obviously we had the protest, and I think it's really, really important that the board and the Rain Group take the fans' feelings and thoughts into account here, because
absolutely,
that they're going to be like the biggest tool for them to use. They need to get the fans on side. You absolutely have to.
I mean, I think
I'm hoping.
Oh,
go on, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say. I was just going to say. Okay, go on. You go.
So I was just going to say that. I forgot what I was going to say now. We've interrupted each other too many times. Mate. You carry on.
Sorry,
carry on.
I was going to say that I kind of spoke about it on there as well, and it was having that fan voice. I was saying it's really hard to make your voice as a fan heard or a fan group heard, but you can, exactly like you've done, have some sway in their decision by if you're protesting the people that it's against. But also my point was going to be against, regardless of the whole Glazer American owner situation, which I think is terrible for most of the ones that have done it because they care more about their other teams in America that they bought rather than the English Premier League teams that they buy. But regardless of it, Chelsea Football Club cannot afford whoever buys the club currently, there can be no dirt that affects them in a year's time, a few years' time, 10 years. You just can't afford that right now. So whoever you go, one, you have to have the fans on side, but two, you absolutely have to have the right investment group behind it that's not going to make any fuck ups or mistakes, because otherwise you can't handle that. Like, because next time it could be points deducted, it could be all sorts of stuff that goes on it, and you just can't afford that as a club.
No, you're absolutely right. It needs to be the cleanest of the clean. Which I think is why this protest could be so important, because that's only going to come out in a few years' time in the media. It's already out there. I don't really know why it's being covered up. Well, money, obviously, money talks. But yeah, it seems like there's a bit of a sort of, there's a few weird things going on inside the club as well with Bruce Buck, the chairman. It's kind of, he's gone out of his way to set up a meeting with the Ricketts family and Paul Cannaville, who was the first ever black player to play for Chelsea, and he's been, he's been sort of an activist against racism within football and within the club. So they probably thought, we could smooth this guy.
PR media spin, yeah.
This is a big figure in the Chelsea community. So yeah, it just feels like they're giving them preferential treatment. They really want them to buy the club, and the fans are saying, we don't want them. We absolutely don't want them. And there's been a whole campaign on Twitter. It was #1 trending in the UK. And then the protest at the game the other day, I don't think it's going to stop there, to be honest. So for as long as this goes on, I think you can expect to see more protests. I think there's word going around of protests at the Madrid game at home as well. And we've seen the power that the protesting has in the past with the whole Super League thing as well. I mean, it sort of reversed that in like 48 hours almost. So,
fan voice is such an important thing. And I know, again, it is hypocritical of what I'm about to say in some senses from being a United fan. But the sad truth is money talks in both ways, because United, obviously, we have, and again, very recently, massive protests against the Glazers. We literally got games called off by blocking roads. We, against Liverpool and stuff. Like there's lots you can do as a fan, but at the same time, half of the people that are also touting Glazers out, as soon as they dip their money and finally invest a little bit just to keep people happy and go, we're going to spruce up Old Trafford and put a coat of paint on it, or we're going to put 100 extra million into the transfer kitty this season or something. Some of those, voices get a bit quieter and dip. And the problem is, you need to be unified on these topics. And if United, we need to keep on going with the Glazers, and, Chelsea fans need to keep going against the Ricketts to make sure that you don't fall into that situation. It's just one of them.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I was going to say, I'm glad you touched on the kind of American sports model when it comes to owning football clubs, obviously. The other main bidder right now is Todd Bowley, who I think is owner of the LA Dodgers baseball team. And he is, I think it's pretty unanimous amongst the Chelsea fans that he is who the fans want to take over. It seems a little bit different to a lot of other sort of American ownerships that we've seen. And that was kind of something that I wanted to avoid to start with, because I've seen it. Obviously, it's not gone down well with you guys. Arsenal aren't very fond of their owners either. Liverpool's kind of a split one, because I actually think they've done pretty well, but I'm not as involved as Liverpool fans, obviously. But I know it's not quite to the extent that United fans feel about Glazer or whatever. But I know they've certainly got their gripes about FSG as well.
Yeah. I think the only thing I would say, I think the guy, sorry, I've forgotten his name, the guy that's put in for the bid for the Dodgers,
Todd Bowley.
Yeah, it's Todd Bowley. So because just from the background that I know on the Dodgers and stuff themselves, and what's kind of happened this year at the Super Bowl amplifies it more than I could ever comment on it. Is that I think there's a very big split here, and it could go really well or really badly either way. Because one, he seems to really care about investing in the teams, but two, and it's a very American thing to do, the reason that they pumped so much money into this season and why they won the Super Bowl this year is because it was in LA, and they made this Hollywood story of like, let's make it the best it can possibly be. And that's why they pumped loads of money into it. And that's what worries me about if they don't have anything like that to do for Chelsea, maybe they pump loads in at the beginning to go, oh look, we're here, let's make everyone happy, and then it falls off when it's not so in the limelight. And it's kind of the same as like it's happened with other clubs as well. And you see the bright shiny owners come in, and then it all goes really downhill. The same as the Glazers, for example, they own the Tampa Bay Bucks, the ones who Bowl the year before. They obviously bought Tom Brady, and like, let's invest and get people back and stuff. They don't seem to transition the same thought process into the English clubs that they own. So it's just a one to be wary of.
No, absolutely. And I agree with you. I think, to have fan backing, they're going to need to know where the money's going to be invested, and pretty much straight away as well. Because obviously we've had this kind of month-long or so period of pretty much no money coming into the club. So we're going to need to make sure that we're going to be stable and we're going to be back on our feet, and we can compete, because we were getting to a stage. Obviously, we're working on something with Tuchel here. I feel like he's building something here. So we need to know that that's going to continue, and they're going to allow that to continue. So yeah, I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, and in general, I think the main thing for Chelsea fans, and actually anyone a fan of the Premier League, we just need to know some time frames on these things, because I keep seeing articles where it keeps changing. It's next week, it's next month, it's next. Like, I don't think anyone knows. I think I made a joke last time. I don't even think Chelsea board knows. Like, from the government, I don't think anyone can give you an exact date of when this stuff needs to be settled by. But obviously, for you being a Chelsea fan, you need it to be sorted ASAP, and the quicker it can be before the end of the season, the more stable things can be put in place for contract talks, for loanee players, for new signings. All that kind of stuff is going to have a massive effect the longer it doesn't appear. But hopefully, for your sake and for the sake of a good Premier League team, with no bias there, it's for the Prem, it needs to be sorted, because you are a strong team in that league, a force in Europe, and that's something that the Prem can't afford to lose one of our top tier teams. That's just the bottom line of it. I mean, have you got anything else to kind of add on that, or do you think we've mostly kind of covered from a Chelsea fan perspective?
No, I think that's pretty much it right now. I'd love to give you sort of more insight, but we're in a similar boat to you. We're kind of in the dark as to what's going on right now. So it's obviously we hear sort of rumours and stuff coming out that I could speak on, but we're a little bit in the dark. There's been little to no announcements recently that to touch on, so no really new news as such. But
just
we'll
rumours.
have to kind of see where it goes. Just have to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, absolutely. And rumours is one of those things. You know it more than lots of other fans as well. I don't even bother with half the rumours, because my club is linked to every player, manager and dog under the sun. And it's like, 1 week we've literally confirmed the next manager and he's got his assistant coming in, and that's what the news is about. The next week it's about a different manager, and he's definitely not. It's bonkers until really hard proof is done, or a journalist I really trust. I'm like, I'll just keep on skipping those stories, which is why I didn't add that as a segment today, because we could have. The only thing we know for sure is that Rio is definitely not going on the coaching staff, because he put a hilarious video out announcing that he was not part of the coaching staff. Actually, I have one more question to ask you. This is going to be an interesting one. It is a Champions League night, we're recording it. It's 2-0 to Liverpool, by the way.
Is it?
And the other game's 0-0. Won't mention that team. And I just wanted to say, I just thought this was interesting for you. So you kind of had some a couple of injury problems recently, and obviously everything that's going on and off the pitch. You've got a big game tomorrow. I just wanted you to give me a score prediction, or how far you think that's going to go. I think it's going to be a really tough game, especially after how the madness that Benzema did against PSG.
Yeah. Geez, I don't know. I don't like doing score predictions of my own team, because I feel like I'm a bit of a jinx if I say, oh yeah, we're going to win. Don't
feel pressured into if you don't want to.
And then we get hammered. But I would say if we are on it, and we can
bounce
put
back
the game,
could be on.
Yeah, if we could put this game out of our minds and just focus on the now, I think we absolutely can beat them. I think they are beatable. Yeah, and we proved that last year. We beat them last year. Obviously it's. Benzema is one to worry about. Benzema is unbelievable. I've always been a massive fan of him.
Absolutely.
I
won't make you do that. I'll say that's good enough. I won't force you into it. And I'll say if you think that. But I also would say on the flip side, both teams are in a fairly similar situation. But you didn't just get spanked 4-0 at the Bernabeu by Barcelona 2 weeks ago as well. So that is also something over them. So it could be a really interesting game. I'm actually really excited to see. I think it'll be a fantastic game.
Yeah, I wish I was excited. I'm kind of more nervous right now.
I assume from a neutral, that is probably more than anyone else. Cool. So I just wanted to say, obviously, first of all, a big thank you to you, mate. I really appreciate it coming on. It's been a pleasure, and to get your insights been kind of invaluable for to give some of the viewers some insight into what it's happening if it's your club at the moment. As you said, unless you're really rare situations, and the only thing I can kind of compare it to is maybe administration, but it's not even that. It's bigger than that. Is a weird one. So I really appreciate it.
No, thank you very much for having me, mate. I really enjoyed it.
Nah, cool. And I just wanted to say, if you have been liking this content, don't forget to give us a like on YouTube or subscribe. And if you hit the notification bell, you'll be notified every time we put a video up. I know it's hard to keep up when videos come up at the moment because the Premier League season has just been all over the place, really. So, matches thick and fast, podcasts come at weird times. That's an easy way to keep track. But also, if you are a Spotify listener, so don't forget to give us a follow on there and give us a 5-star ratings. It really helps us out. And if that's your preferred way to listen to it when you're on your way to work or anything else, then that's really good. But that's been it from us. I've really enjoyed this episode. Some good topics covered. We've got some football back. The international break is over again. So the fixtures come thick and fast. And there is more Premier League still this week to go, and some spicy Champions League games. So enjoy your football this week, whether that's as a neutral or a slightly tentative but hopeful fan of teams. Cool. So we'll catch you all next week. Thanks very much.